Welcome back to the Better Late Than Never Club. I'm Mac.
And I'm Frost.
And tonight we're watching a dystopian film of high acclaim from 2006, Children of Men.
Which, I know nothing about this film. I've heard of the name. That's it. There ends. We done. Finished. Finito.
End the episode. Oh, look, to be honest, I also don't know anything about this film other than the couple of loose points that I picked up from my research.
Yeah. This was recommended to us by a patron.
Yes, thank you.
The good Canon. And we do like, this is one of those recommendations where it comes from a film buff. So I feel like we're here to disappoint. Yeah. When you hear it's on a film lover's top films or films they'd recommend, then it comes with a certain set of expectations. When we're still recovering from the David Lynch fiasco that we subjected ourselves to.
Fiasco. It was just a very different kind of film.
Yeah. And one that
I am excited to get back to perhaps a more traditional film with a plot that I can follow.
Hopefully that's the case here. So
we can only hope. Let me tell you what I know. So we have a pretty good set of genres, I would say. There's quite a few here because this is through like Google, Paramount Plus, what they think it is, and Wikipedia. So I just wrote them all down.
Yeah, the longest list of...
Well, because it is interesting how some places can call it one thing and they're quite different, really.
Yeah. I would have thought surely that what IMDb is the most solid reference.
I don't know I'm not sure. Anyway, what I've got is dystopian, action, thriller, sci-fi, fantasy.
Interesting.
The fantasy, I think, was surprised me the most because the rest of them sort of make sense altogether. But sci-fi and fantasy, I feel like, aren't often seen together.
Yeah. I feel like you have one or the other.
Right. It is based on a novel from 1992.
Interesting.
By the author P.D. James. Her name was Phyllis Dorothy, hence P.D.
What a great name.
So she was a British author. She wrote a bunch of...
Is she no longer an author, or is she no longer British?
She's no longer alive.
Okay.
She wrote a bunch of books. Like, I think she wrote kind of Agatha Christie style. They followed a particular police officer, I think.
Okay.
So she had like this series that she was known for, but this was one of the kind of unrelated works that she wrote.
Okay.
That was a standalone book. Also, just something to note, she was apparently pleased with the movie version.
Oh, that's high praise.
That's good.
Yeah.
So that's all I know about that, really. The movie was written and directed by a man called Alfonso Cuarón. I don't think we've had an Alfonso. I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering that Mexican pronunciation of that, or the Spanish. It's a Mexican. He's Mexican. Pretty sure. Oh, God. Now I'm questioning everything. I didn't write that down. What I do know is that his other works, some of them are Mexican films. And you do know a few of his other works.
Really?
So let's get into his filmography. Because it's not super long, but it is interesting. So I'll list them all. We start with something called Solo con tu pareja, which is a Mexican film. Then he did A Little Princess, which is also a book adaptation. Then Great Expectations, another book adaptation. Obviously, the Charles Dickens Great Expectations.
I haven't seen that.
I haven't seen that either. Then we have what is considered his breakout film, sort of what took him to the next level, I guess, in directing, which was Y tu mamá también, another Mexican film. Then we have sort of a bit of a, I would say maybe left field option, is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
What?
So that's the third Harry Potter film. So he directed that. That's the only one he directed, but he did direct that.
Wild.
Then he did this, Children of Men.
So his fifth film ever was...
Correct.
Oh, wow.
Then he did Children of Men, and then here's the real big kicker, the big one, if you will, Gravity.
Oh, wow. Sandra Bullock?
Yeah, I think that's the one, right? Yeah, because I always get confused between Gravity and...
Inception.
Not Inception. No, not Inception. Interstellar. Because they came out similar times, I feel like.
Yeah.
But yes, I think
Gravity is the Sandra Bullock one.
Yes. And George Clooney.
Interstellar had a big cast.
We're talking about Gravity.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think it was George Clooney and Sandra Bullock. Anyway, either way, that was huge.
Yeah.
That got obviously a lot of Academy noms and Academy wins. And then a few years ago, he had something called Roma, which also got like Academy noms and a few awards.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen that one.
Me neither.
So that's his filmography. So kind of a bit of an interesting bunch, but also quite successful and like big films.
2 really big AAA films that are like Hollywood mainstays. Well, not that Harry Potter necessarily did well in Hollywood, but it was
still, it's a big deal.
A commercial success.
Yeah. In terms of for this film, Children of Men, he chose not to read the book, but he wrote an abridged version, and the other guy that helped write the script with him did read the whole book.
Yeah, you'd kind of hope so.
Yeah, that's interesting though that he chose that.
Yeah.
There's also a particular quirk. I don't know, it's not really a quirk, a distinctive feature perhaps of Alfonso's work that he's known for. I don't know if you want me to tell you it or if me telling you it will make you only look for it. Would you rather not know and me tell you afterwards?
Wait, is it like, are we talking like certain camera styles?
Yeah, it's a certain feature of the way he shoots his movies.
I don't think it'll be particularly impactful to my viewing experience.
Well, so the feature is particularly long shots, lengthy shots.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize this, but apparently the average shot in a movie is actually really short. It's like 1 or 2 seconds. It's really short, and I didn't realize that. I think for this one, it's like 16 seconds or something very long.
By comparison.
I could be quoting those numbers wrong, but it's something like that. It's pretty dramatically longer than the traditional...
shorter than you think and much longer than usual.
Yeah, so that's something interesting. And that's basically it. That's the information about the director. The only other thing to note about this is some of the actors that we'll be looking for.
Yeah, lay me on the cast. Who's our billings?
So this is not the entire cast. I just wrote down the actors that I've recognised, but there were quite a few.
Okay.
So starting with Clive Owen.
Not a name I know.
Well, so it's interesting. Clive Owen, I realised looking at his filmography that I actually haven't seen kind of anything that he's in, despite knowing his face and knowing his name. I have seen him in The Bourne Identity. He plays like the professor in The Bourne Identity.
Oh, yeah.
But that's, I think, maybe the only thing I've actually seen him in. But I do recognise his face. Like he's like a person that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Moving on to Julianne Moore, who you and I, or you especially, might know her best as being President Coin from The Hunger Games. She doesn't really look like Julianne Moore in that though, but she has like red hair and she's great. She's in a lot of things. She's a really good actress.
It's really interesting. I can't really remember The Hunger Games because we read the books and then we watched the movies, and so much of when I read a book and watch a movie at the same time, so much of my own imagination of the book gets precedence. Like it's what I experienced first typically. So the movie just
I don't know
space.
what else you might have seen her in, but she's in that. Then we also have Michael Caine. And I just wrote down, I know him from everything. He's in everything. Like he's in so many movies.
I can picture Michael Caine.
Yeah.
That's an easy one to do.
Yeah. Then we have, I practiced pronouncing his name, and now Chiwetel Ejiofor, who he's in Love Actually. He plays a pretty minor role in that. He's also in Doctor Strange, and he made a pretty big break in 12 Years a Slave as one of the main actors in that. He's pretty great. He's also he's in the Doctor Strange universe.
Yeah.
And stuff. We also have Charlie Hunnam, who is in Sons of Anarchy, and also...
Is he like the main guy from Sons of Anarchy?
I think so.
Yeah, like a blonde hair kind of guy. Yeah.
He's also in Pacific Rim.
Yep.
And then lastly, I know this is a really long list, but Danny Huston or Houston, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but he's got like a really recognizable face. I didn't actually know his name until I saw it in this list, but he plays a bad guy in X-Men Origins, like William Stryker.
Oh, yeah.
You'll recognize him as soon as you see him. He's got one of those faces, but I didn't know his name until now. So we've got a pretty big cast. There are other names. These are the ones I've recognized or knew of already.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I wrote down, which I know this is a really long preamble, but it's a pretty impressive film, is the Rotten Tomatoes score is 92%.
That's pretty high.
It's listed on a lot of critics and reviewers' top 10 lists for the year of 2006.
Yeah.
And a few people list it in like greatest movies of the decade and stuff as well. And it got nominated for a few Academy Awards, but it didn't win any.
Interesting.
It got nominated for cinematography, editing, and adapted screenplay. So it's for a movie that I have never really heard of, and I know it's got a dystopian through line, and I know what that focuses around. I won't tell you, but I can't believe it sort of passed completely by me in so many ways.
I mean, like
given
you said,
how many,
it's a film lover's film, so critics and, I guess marketing didn't win for it in that way.
I suppose. I mean, I was too young when it came out to be into it, so I would have had to go back anyway.
Yeah.
So, but I'm excited. It's definitely, I love dystopian themes. I think they're really interesting. I've read and watched a lot of dystopian media that I think I've enjoyed. So that works for me. I'm excited for that. And thriller, sci-fi, fantasy. It's got a lot of hallmarks of things that I enjoy. So
this is a lot of check boxes for films that we typically enjoy.
Absolutely. So high expectations. And I'm hoping they aren't dashed.
Let's not disappoint Canon with our scores.
No, I hope not. Let's dive into Children of Men.
First, we find ourselves in the not-so-far-flung year of 2027, where the world is suffering from a global fertility crisis. The UK has become a police state, and former activist Theo Farron becomes involved with a militant group called the Fishers. Almost immediately, the group's leader is killed, and Theo discovers it was actually a coup. This change of power is all in the pursuit of controlling Key, a young woman who reveals to Theo that she is pregnant. Theo decides to take on the objective of getting Key to the Human Project, to protect both her and the baby. Traveling across Britain, with the Fishers in hot pursuit, Key ends up giving birth in a refugee detention centre. Both sides of the ensuing combat are stunned at the presence of the baby, and allow the trio to pass. Getting to a rowboat and the checkpoint, they wait, injured, as the Human Project ship arrives. Here's some deeper thoughts on the matter.
Well,
tense music starts now.
I don't know if I took a full breath for most of that movie.
Yeah, that was a holding breath kind of movie from about, I want to say, the explosion at the coffee shop at the start.
Yeah.
From about then.
Yeah, which is approximately like 2 minutes into the movie.
About 2 minutes into the movie. The world building. It was so believable.
Yeah, in a really upsetting way, but very impressive.
For those of you playing at home, the day of tomorrow, the Children of Men future is based in 2027, so we know what the next 2 years are going to look like.
No, but the idea is that this all started back in 2004 or whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's not quite telling our future, but yeah, it's pretty brutal.
Yeah, there is no shying away from just casual violence.
Well, it's not just like casual violence, I guess it is. I guess that is the only phrase of it. I don't know, really.
Like human life has become cheap, even though it's the rarest commodity.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
I mean, especially this kind of movie in today's world.
With the political lens of current events. Right.
So the treatment of refugees, the callousness of just bombing entire cities and things like that. That's all too real and horrific. So this is definitely a very intense movie to watch. Kind of at any time, I'm sure. But
yeah,
it was made in 2006, so that was true back then as well. This is not new.
Yeah, the political landscape.
It's just, history is a circle. We all know that.
Oof.
Yeah, but wow. You said it early on, and it was true for the entirety of the film, the long shots, the lengthy cinematic shots.
Yeah, I don't think you would have needed to point it out to me at the start.
No, probably not. But woof, that was... It's so interesting how much of a difference that makes for the intensity of a shot.
It's a different kind of intensity. Like those close cropped, fast shots really build like action.
Right.
Whereas this just built stress.
Yes.
And
it was really immersive.
Yeah.
I think because you're not getting that shift in perspective constantly that a lot of those high action films will have. You're sticking with a scene and the camera's moving with the characters in a way that makes you feel like you're walking or moving with the characters.
Or there's probably a remarkable behind the scenes of how they pulled off some of these shots.
Right.
Because either they have the fittest cameramen known to like it's like the joke about Bear Grylls cameraman.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like he does it.
That's true, but also it's impressive for the actors because if you think about it, you have to maintain a level of quality in your acting for a lot longer, right?
And
like
if you
it's not like you're editing together very short scenes that can be chopped and changed and whatever. it's like you got to get it right, and it's got to be good for that whole scene.
God, the car escape from the farm, like the steady, slow downhill. There were just so many moments where it's like, this is such a low. We're about to be interrupted by a cat. This is such a low action but high stress situation. It was very meow meow meow. Yeah.
Curie was very stressed.
She was.
There was something I'll say. One of the only kind of, I guess, uplifting parts of this movie, because by and large, pretty depressing. Curie, was the amount of animals in it. There was a lot of animals, and no animals die, which I was worried that was going to happen. Yeah. We were going to have a really horrible,
except for the fire pits of cattle at the start.
Yeah, but they were, that's one step away from being on a shelf in a supermarket. So I don't have an emotional connection to that, but I do have an emotional connection to Santo, the little dog running after, Marika. So anyway, that was nice.
Yeah, look, there's a lot to unpack in that film. It is a very short film. It feels like a short film.
See, I disagree. I don't know. I'm torn because it is actually not that long of a film. An hour 49 or something.
Yeah, not including credits, an hour 40 flat.
Yeah, and so that's actually quite short for these days for like a non-comedy. Yeah. But I maybe it was just because of how intense it was.
90 minutes is a long time if you haven't taken a breath.
That's what I'm saying. So it's a very intensive film, so it doesn't feel as short as it probably would otherwise. For me, that's how I felt.
It doesn't give you a break. In fact,
zero break.
Theo doesn't get a break.
Not really.
Pretty much from the moment at the coffee shop where there's the bomb, he has a bad day. Then he
has a couple of moments of peace, very, very brief.
Yeah.
When he's smoking weed with Jasper.
Yeah.
Near the beginning, before he's been roped into the rebel plot.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that Julianne Moore wasn't in it for longer. She played Julian.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's sort of like she's the character that gets Theo on board, because she's like, I need somebody that I can trust because this is too important. Right, and she tells Key
he's the only one who can trust. So she maybe had an inkling.
So she's got this. She knows that this is all like tinderbox ready to go, and she needs the one person she can trust. And it's like they've obviously had their falling out over the loss of their child.
Yeah.
But she's like, there's one person in this world, in this dystopian, absolutely fucked world that I can trust, and it's Theo.
Yeah.
We've got to go, we'll risk it all. Like we'll kidnap in the middle of the day. We'll take him to one of our places. We'll explain the plot to him and just trust that he'll follow through, because she knows him, and turns out she was right to do it. Because Theo gave it 110%. He gave it the good old British try.
I mean, you would, right? I guess. It's kind of similar-esque in terms of like The Last of Us.
Yeah.
With Joel and Ellie.
Yep.
Right? Like, because the whole point is like Ellie's the only one immune, so we got to get her to a place. Now, the difference obviously is that like, that we know how that ends.
Yeah.
But we don't really get that. We don't see the reality of what Key is going into at the end there with the human project. We don't know. It's unanswered, which is a little unsatisfying, but it is what it is. I get it. That's a question mark throughout the whole film, and so it feels sort of appropriate that it's left that way as well.
I mean, it's interesting, like Theo, this whole time, he doesn't really believe in the human project. He says when he's hanging out with Jasper, he's like, it's all a crock, like it doesn't exist. Yeah. None of it's real. Like it's just a lie the fish have made up. But it is interesting that he's like, oh, there's this miracle, like this human child. One hasn't been born in over 18 years. Absolute miracle. And you got to have faith. Right. And it's interesting that this story, and obviously if the author was happy with it, it must have represented the values of the book pretty well. That it probably is a pretty big commentary on faith. That Theo is a non-believer, witnesses a miracle, and then just has blind faith that if, he soldiers on and he
stays the course, yeah. I mean, I think I did see on the Wikipedia when I scroll past the plot, and I always try and scroll past like things that are going to explore, because that's what we're here to do. Yeah. But I did see one of the headings for themes was faith.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, well, that could mean a lot of things, and now I know what that means.
Yeah, it is quite interesting, because, obviously the boat coming out of the fog, an alternative ending is that doesn't happen, right? But I feel like that would be obviously much worse.
That's sad on sad, yeah.
Yeah. Like that's like The Mist has multiple endings.
Right.
Which is the same kind of, like no one comes or someone comes. Either way, it's a pretty horrible outcome. And in this case, when the Tomorrow comes, we know it's a hospital ship disguised as a fishing ship. But we also don't
really know what their intention, kind of like with Joel and Ellie in The Last of Us. They think that they're taking Ellie to be like the savior of the world, and ends up she's there to be a sacrifice for the greater good, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So who's to say? I guess that's the message of the film, is the faith in that it's better than the alternatives, which is everyone going at each other's throats and blowing the world up, basically.
There was some very serious and tense moments, especially when it came to, you know, like the baby reveal, which was toward the end of the film. And they really nailed like just the wonder of all these people not believing what they're seeing, because many of these people are old enough to have
known babies, and a handful of them maybe haven't ever. Yeah.
Right? They've just heard. They've heard, well, that's what happened. And now they're all like witnessing for the first time this baby. And rebels and soldiers like just all stop.
Yeah.
And that's a really, really like...
It's a very affecting sequence, but also like it's kind of upsetting. It was very well done. I agree with you. Like it was very emotionally charged.
Yeah.
But it also just made me kind of sad, I think, because, you know, obviously the world we live in now isn't going through this exact situation where babies are
literal
non-existent.
Miracles.
And so now they're a miracle. But it's sad that a baby being present doesn't stop conflict. You know what I mean? That's what it's like it did for a brief moment in this film because of the circumstances, but it's heartbreaking that that's not the reality in the real world, and that, oh gosh, yeah. I
mean, obviously this is one of the tags, right? You said one of the types. I can't remember the right word. One of the
genres?
Thank you. One of the genres of this film was dystopian, where the idea of dystopia is take the world as we know it and then twist it to be
slightly askew and broken.
And meant to be in such a way that it's almost unbelievable. Like, you know, cyber dystopias or, you know, brass punk dystopias. They've got a weird power structure where, you have like a royalty and like a lower class, and there's usually some abhorrent thing that we would be like, oh, that's not in our society. And the abhorrence in this is how the government and the people are treating immigrants, refugees. Like it's very, very in your face the whole film.
Yeah.
That the law enforcement is basically rounding up anyone and everyone and putting them in cages and shipping them off to refugee camps, which are akin to
death camps.
City slums, death camps. Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Yeah, pogroms.
The fact that is actually in our current era, not too far from, like, that's meant to be the dystopian twist.
Right.
Like the challenge.
Obviously, the twist is just the scale, really, at this point.
Yeah.
It's unfortunately not crazy different.
No. It's not that dystopian, is I guess what I'm saying.
No, I know, and that's what I was saying, that's what made this film so extra tense, is that there was no space mentally to be like, that's not realistic.
Yeah, it's like when you're watching a horror film and it's in a house, you're like, I'm in a house, I'm not okay with this.
Right.
But you're watching a horror film and it's on a boat, it's fine because we're not in a boat. We're watching a dystopian film about people murdering people, and it's not fine because there's just not enough differences.
No, there's really not.
There's not enough differences.
I thought that it was interesting that they were like, England is the last standing place. For some reason, that feels so unreal. That's something that feels unrealistic. I don't know why.
Yeah. I mean,
I can imagine Australia, only because we're so separate. You know what I'm saying? Whereas, England is literally... like
the benefit England has, like let's just talk practicalities.
Sure.
Smaller island, much richer in resources.
Yeah.
Whereas Australia is a huge continent.
Sure.
With very little resources. So, we rely heavily on trade.
That's true.
Blah, blah, blah. I could see how in a dystopian world where a collapse of a world system pretty rapidly results in maybe Australia doesn't collapse on its own, but maybe neighbouring countries invade for land and it's destroyed in conflict.
Yeah, maybe.
And Britain is powerful enough, both geopolitically and militarily, that it can
defend itself,
resist that. It's got allies in Europe. It's not going to get invaded by Europe, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, this was all written and produced before Britain left the EU and is now on its own. So in the current political climate, I don't think Britain would be the last bastion of hope.
But I guess, that's the fantasy part.
It's also, this is a dystopian future. That messaging is from the government. Maybe it isn't.
True.
Maybe that's just the way of saying, like, keep calm and carry on.
Who knows?
Britain and the crown have you. Everyone else has fallen, but not Britain. We're soldiering on. Doesn't matter what the truth is.
Yeah.
Because there is a nod to the fact that Theo works at the Ministry of Energy. And that sort of like messaging, like, the Ministry of X, Y, and Z, makes me always think of like 1984, like the Ministry of Truth and the Ministry of War.
I haven't read 1984.
Ah, well, you're familiar with the phrase, like, we're always at war with Eurasia.
No.
In 1984, the concept being is like...
Big Brother is watching.
Big Brother is watching, and...
That's all I know.
Well, yeah, there you go. The concept is sort of like the government is completely in control of all information.
Right.
And so the information being told by the government to the people, all that information comes through the Ministry of Truth. And the commentary at the time is that the Ministry of Truth only tells lies, the Ministry of Peace brings war, the Ministry of War brings peace, or something like that. But there are three major global powers, and at one stage, you know, the global power that you're witnessing the book's perspective of is at war with one country or one other global power and allied with Eurasia. And then at some point it switches, but they've always been at war with Eurasia. Eurasia are the enemy. And
right. So there is no war in Ba Sing Se.
Yeah, there is no war in Ba Sing Se.
Okay.
So
got it.
in the same way with this, it's like Britain might not actually be the only one standing.
No, I get that. Yeah. No. Oh, yeah, no, the acting was phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. Like, this
really,
was
really
immersive.
good.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, immersive is really one of the biggest takeaways. Like, everything contributed to that. The shooting style, the
setting,
the sound, the everything, the acting, it was all very believable.
Yeah. The story was believable. The pacing, the actions people took were believable in pretty much every facet.
Yeah. Marika was MVP.
Yeah, Marika was MVP.
Really up there.
Yep.
I feel really bad for Miriam.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel bad for a lot of people.
Obviously. This is feel bad for everyone in the movie.
I know, but like, at least like, I mean, obviously Jasper that's really awful as well. He seemingly had a little bit of time to have like a pretty okay life out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And he got to let his wife go out easy.
Yeah.
And then obviously he went down in a flame in you know, a hail of bullets. But Miriam getting like pulled out into this absolute hellish landscape and put a bag over her head and assuming she's probably dead, right? That's the assumption that you have to make at that point.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Really awful. Obviously, you don't have as much sympathy for the rest of the fishers because like they are trying to use the baby politically.
They are a terrorist organization.
Right.
Because the government would have deigned them to be so, but also because...
I mean, it's complicated, right? Like a lot of freedom fighting, you know, the message that they're trying to get out is so the refugees don't get treated like that, but then you just flip it and they're breaking into they get the refugee camp bombed. Yeah. Because, you know, so it's complicated, of course, but... Yeah, the short-sightedness, obviously, like Julian as the leader of the Fishers was, you know, she had a vision and Luke had a different vision, and that's why he arranged for her to be killed. Yeah. I really did like... That was a good twist. Yeah. I did not see that coming at all. Yep. Oh, it's just that whole scene of her getting shot and then them trying to get away, and then, just... I did think, and I was like, it's just for plot reasons at the time, but I did think when they're running away from the ambush and the motorbike is chasing them and he's got a gun and he's about to shoot, I'm not a rocket scientist, but if there's a motorbike accelerating toward you and you're in reverse... and they're about to take a shot, you just press the brakes. The bike is either going to go past you or it's going to crash into you. Either way, that's bad for the bike, not bad for the people in the big metal cage. And so I was like, that was a really stupid decision of Luke not to, do that. But yeah, it makes actually a lot of sense that he sort of made it easy for them in a way to, because the target was Julian, right? Like that's... Yeah. I reckon, the whole movie is tense, but that last like 20 minutes in the refugee camp in the battle was just so awful, and it felt so real of like when he's navigating down the streets and up in this building and there's bullets just randomly going off and people just getting shot and there's so many people injured and dead around him, and it's just awful, like very, very intensive, like but it's hard to say like, wow, really well done, but in a horrifying way. You know what I mean? Like the fact that this was done for film so realistically, at the end of the day, that's how it felt. It felt realistic. Yeah. And to pull something like that off, it's like, man, what have you seen? Like, where did you go to get the source material? Pre-2006, there was plenty of awful things that had happened you know.
Yeah, it's a pretty big... I'm surprised this didn't win something. I'm surprised it was only nominated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it was up against, you know, in that year.
I mean, you said one of the things it was nominated for was sound, and I think also like cinematography.
No, it was cinematography, editing, and adapted screenplay, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think I'm going to financially recover from this, Beck. Is there anything you didn't like about it, other than the fact that you probably got a few more grey hairs because it was pretty stressful?
Yeah, I guess I would have preferred I like a more concrete ending. That is just a personal preference of mine.
Yeah.
To walk away from a film with a, you know, something that I can hold on to and say...
A nice resolution.
Either way, you know, either really awful or really, you know, like good.
I can see why they didn't.
Yeah, I said that at the start. I can see why they didn't too. I'm just saying...
I also think where they ended it is pretty good because this is about Theo. Like, it's about Theo and his faith and his miracle. And when he's dead, it doesn't matter what happens on the boat. The movie is pretty much exclusively shot through his lens.
That's fair. So once he's dead, it's like, that's it.
He's bleeding out in the rowboat, and Key says, Theo, the boat's here. And that's when he lets go.
Well, he dies like a second before that, but yeah.
I mean, like, he's slumped and maybe in unconsciousness.
I mean, yeah, I would have hoped that he could survive. It was kind of crazy how much he did after getting shot.
Adrenaline is a hell of a drug.
No, I know. I mean, no, there's not much I didn't like. I mean, there was bits that annoyed me just because I hate when people are awful.
Yeah.
Like Sid.
Yep.
That was upsetting. Yep. For a second, I thought he was still going to be, like, good.
A good guy, yeah.
But, I mean, he works... Like, the only reason he's being, like... He's doing a favour for his weed guy at the beginning.
And he might have even got paid. Like, we don't know.
So... It's not surprising at all. Yeah, I don't know. I guess... No, there's nothing I didn't like. It just was very intense. It's not the kind of film that you walk away from feeling lighter by any means.
Yeah.
So you're not going to watch this and then...
Feel good about yourself.
No, it's pretty dark and you might want to do this back to back with something a bit lighter.
Just like watch some Bluey after this or something. Yeah. Just like something wholesome.
Give you a bit of hope and humanity.
Yeah.
Because right now it certainly doesn't make you feel hopeful.
Yes, ma'am. Are you ready to rate this film?
I think so.
I really enjoyed watching this film. Like,
yeah.
in not in the like the masochistic way of, oh, this was so painful, I enjoyed it. It was really fascinating to watch as a movie, and I was gripped from start to finish. You know, there wasn't a minute there where I was like, gee, this is dragging on a bit. You have to be in the right headspace to watch this film, so it's not a film, you know, for every day, every moment of every day.
For every moment of every day.
You know, it's not a film that you could just put on, right? You have to sit down and watch it. I will give this 9.1, pull my fingers, out of 10.
I was tossing up between a flat 9 and like a 9.2.
Interesting numbers to toss up between.
Who would rate a film a 9.1?
Someone really attractive and good at editing.
I gotta think of what I want to... There's so many... I want to... You chose like the only comical thing. Alright, I'll rate the film 9.2. They like you. They don't usually like people.
That's the dogs, folks. The farmer talking about the dogs because the dogs liked Theo. Because Theo's a good guy and the dogs knew it.
They did.
And so did the kittens.
So I looked up the Academy Awards for that year. For film editing, it lost to The Departed.
Haven't seen that.
Neither have I. For Best Adapted Screenplay, it lost to The Departed.
Oh, no.
For Best Cinematography, it lost to Pan's Labyrinth.
Interesting.
And that's it. Those were the 3 nominations that it got.
Remind me, and you might not know, but is Pan's Labyrinth the one with the guy with the eyes in his hands?
Yes. Yeah. I think so.
I think I've seen part of that film.
Yeah, I might have also seen part of it. I don't think I've seen it all the way through. So that's what happened. I mean, sometimes it just goes that way. I mean,
that's
it wasn't even nominated for Best Picture.
I can kind of get that. Like, it's not really a Best Picture kind of film.
You don't think?
I mean, like, you know how... I
mean, it's hard to... I don't really know. I mean...
For Oscars, you know what I'm saying?
You can put so much stock into these things, right? Because as we all know, there's politics and money...
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, involved in this. You have to campaign for it.
Yeah. So what I was saying is this is not a Best Picture kind of film in that it's not like a big, well-rounded and has a nice resolution, like...
Maybe it's too political.
Right.
Yeah.
There's enough with it where you could go, well, it's a little bit too je ne sais quoi. Whereas for Best Picture, we're just going to go with the good golden child over here. Christopher Nolan did a film. We'll give him Best Picture.
Well, The Departed one. Because obviously that was one of the big drama films of the year.
I want to watch The Departed now because we haven't seen it. And if it beat this in several sections and Best Picture, it's got to be a good film.
I guess so. I mean, look, something that I find really interesting in this conversation is I do wonder if whatever this film, because this film is political, but not in like a clear-cut way.
Yeah, it's not like, Trump bad, Biden good.
Back in 2006, definitely not. But it certainly has a message of humanity, to maintain humanity and that dehumanization is bad. Right?
Yeah.
Because that's a big part of what all the baddies are doing.
Yep.
Is essentially just, so I don't know. I think I need a cold glass of water and a hug after this.
Yeah. We'll go.
I feel dehydrated from holding my breath.
Yeah. We'll go to Coles and get some ice cream and feel good.
But that's not to say you shouldn't, dear listener, watch this film.
Yeah, watch this film. Just set up for it. Make sure that you've got somebody close you can call afterwards and just complain about the film to them over the,
It's really very well done. Very impressive. Thank you for the recommendation from our patron. I shiver me timbers about the rest of your list if they all have this level of emotional investment.
Oh God, I hope not.
If you have your own recommendation, let us know either over on Patreon or Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, comments, likes, subscribes, they'll get to us somehow,
all
I'm
that
sure.
Jazz. And we look forward to talking to you next time. Bye-bye.
Till next time.
This episode of the Better Late Than Never Club is brought to you by our patrons: Alex, Christopher, Lindy, Matthew, Nathan, and Rachel.
And also our members: Aimless, Andrew, Raina, Salty Pond, and Simon.
Thank you for listening.